Hi everyone. Here we are looking at our stimuli of the week 2, number 2. So this is 2.1 for the unit 2 week for population and migration. Today we're going to be looking at this first stimuli, breaking it down, and seeing how we can go about maybe making questions for it or answering FRQs about this particular stimulus. So like always, we want to look at kind of what information is provided to us, right? And here we have our title, right? Population statistics for China and India in 2018, and then we have a different number, different amount of information in each of these columns, a different variable that we're looking at. From population in billions to birth rates, death rates, increase rates, fertility rates. Now already birth, death, increase rate, I'm thinking about DTM, demographic transition model. So I want to be thinking about DTM, right? Where stages these are gonna fall into, these particular countries. So China, for the most part, would be at stage 3, and India as well would also be at stage 3. Right. So what I know about these so far, at least, is that they have the same levels of development, which means I'm probably not looking for similarities, right? I may not be looking for reasons how they're the same, because developmentally they are the same on the DTM at least, right? These would also both be, right, both NICs, newly industrialized countries. So what I'm looking for maybe is the difference, or what are the differences, right? Maybe the statistics are different. Why are they so, right? Why are these statistics different between China and India, even though they have the same level of development overall, right? So for my population, it's roughly the same, right? 1.3 going to 1.4 billion for both. And here I can look at my birth rates, my death rates, my increase rates, and my fertility rates. They have this extra context here, right? So for birth rates, looking at that CBR, those births per thousand people per year, I see China has a birth rate of 12 per thousand, India has a birth rate of 20 per thousand, right? So if I'm thinking of these differences again, right? So I want to think about CBR. I'm thinking about these birth rates first, the differences therein, and India has a higher CBR. Next, I want to think about my death rates, right? My CDR instead. And for my CDR, China 7 per thousand, India 6 per thousand, right? China has a higher CDR instead, right? Higher death rate. Lastly, my NIR, my natural increase rate, how fast the population is growing per year. And China has a growth rate of 0.5%. India has a growth rate of 1.4%, right? So India also has a higher NIR. As far as fertility rates go, my TFR, looking at the same thing, differences, similarities. And it looks like here, China has a fertility rate of 1.8, and India has a fertility rate of 2.3, right? So India has a higher TFR, higher total fertility rate. But the other thing to note here is that China's TFR is less than 2.2, right? That 2.1, 2.2 range means that if we're lower than this range, we're looking at potential negative growth, right? That population is not replacing itself, right? The replacement rate is too low, right? Older people are dying, but not enough young people are or will be born to replace them. So demographically, right, because it's all we have so far here, we then want to start thinking about what sorts of statistics are going to matter, right? Or maybe what sorts of events or influences led to these particular statistics happening in the first place, right? So we know birth rates and death rates. Birth rates in particular have a lot of tie-ins with NIR and TFR, right? These go hand in hand. And so we're looking at things like education, general and sex education. We're looking at maybe access to healthcare, family planning, NAR, TFR, we're looking at the same sorts of things, right, in terms of access, right? Why would India be higher in these regards? Why would China be lower? Well, maybe it's that India has less access to medical or healthcare, right, for women in particular, right? And we know that in general, as we have more access to healthcare, more access to medical care, we see these birth rates and increase rates and fertility rates drop over time. Hand in hand with that is this education, right? Both general and sex education, but especially for women in both cases, the increased amount of education access we have for people in a country, those birth rates and increase rates and fertility rates also go down, right? Now, aside from this, we think about our death rate. This is all going to be about access to healthcare, right, which could be in the form of medicines or vaccines. And we see that there's not a huge variation in terms of the death rate, right? 7 per thousand to 6 per thousand. So maybe we don't really actually have that much difference in this type of access because those rates are actually pretty similar, right? If we look at these other rates, right, birth rate, fertility rate, and increase rate, we see larger differences that are there, right? So developmentally, these countries are the same, right? Quote unquote the same, DTM, stage 3, both NICs, but there are some nuances going on in the country. Some details that are as of yet undiscovered, right? Until we break down the stimulus and look at it in detail like we are here. Now, overall, these are the statistics that you're looking at in this country, right? And maybe you want to look at solutions or what this might mean in the future, right? So for China in particular, just like we talked about last week with this aging population, right? If you don't have enough young people to replace the old people, you're gonna have issues, right, later on down the line, right? That dependency ratio is going to shift. And economically, that can become a difficult thing to parse, right? A difficult thing to deal with. So that's just kind of that demographic economic connection, right? These are all population characteristics, but because the population is the way it is, that may have an effect economically later on. This is the basic breakdown for this particular stimulus. Hope it's been helpful to you. As always, hoping you're happy, healthy, and safe. And we'll see you on the next video.